now tapped into the Rion frequency, where truth cuts deep, growth hits different, and culture leads the conversation. Hosted by Rion, this is the come up for the culture.
I want to speak about black excellence. The fact that my brown skin feels heaven sent. When the wind blows, I feel the touch of heaven's breath. You brainwash your intelligence is evident. Evidence we built some pyramids they claim it's aliens. Melanin skin absorbs the light inside you radiant. Elevate your conscience, stuck inside the office. Employee of the month, they won't even put that in your coffin. Let's talk about the profit, the margins of spilled your bonnet. Drinking water from your faucet, just to give you droplets. But you in the club, it's popping. Penny, that's the option. Pictures that you prompted, but forget it cause you locked in. Living in the moment. Ryan said it's token, if you black, poor, you broken. Black excellence, when they spill our blood, it's loading. The third eye, the karma gates is open, but death is better than bondage. Yeah, that's the option. Stay cautious, stay dangerous. You don't need no accolades, nigga, you famous.
What's up, world? You are now tapped into the Rion frequency, and this is where thoughts meet elevation, and we remember who we are. I'm your host, Rion, and this week I actually got some exciting news because the website is finally finished. So my initial goal, of course, was to have it out by September, but that didn't happen just because of the nature of myself, just being a perfectionist, and I got sick, so having the flu just kind of set me back a few weeks, but it is officially live now. So the rionfrequency.com, you can check out all the latest episodes. Of course, you can check out just the reading list that we're going to have. Recommended reading next season is going to be dedicated to the making of a radical. I'm also going to be adding some resources, so that is going to be for home buying, credit, any type of like financial education, therapy, wellness, mutual aid programs, really all things that can benefit black culture, black people, just giving back in every way that I can, just trying to recreate, just an environment of Tulsa, shopping together, you know what I mean, reaching out and having resources that are for us. And biased by the people. So yeah, and everything that's going to be there is going to be free. It's not going to be any type of like selling courses or anything like that. And in addition to that, it is going to be endorsed and scrutinized by professionals in their respective fields. Black professionals, mind you, black professionals in their respective fields. So yeah, man, tap into the rionfrequency.com because it's now live. And shout out before I even finish, like shout out to and Every Nigga Deserves. Just tapped in with them, got the hoodie, so fuck with them. I'll link their Instagram, but the message and what they're trying to spread, I fuck with entirely. It's really just about making space to be black and healing. So every nigga, the hoodie that I got is Every Nigga Deserves Therapy, which is true. All niggas need to go to therapy. And yeah, man, if y'all could do me a favor, wherever you're listening from, just make sure that you guys are, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you comment, you know what I mean? That helps boost, the videos and it helps reach the people that it needs to get to. So greatly appreciate that. If you're listening on any of the podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything like that, just make sure that you review the show. And just so, that we can find, our people. But now that we got that all out the way, we gotta really address what the fuck is going on. And especially as it pertains to what just happened in Chicago. And I know that, black folks getting treated egregiously in this country is some of the things that just happen. We become numb to and disassociated with because it happens so frequently that like the trauma doesn't even affect us anymore. But what took place, with these ICE agents, raiding the neighborhood is a problem. When they zip tying our kids and separating them from the adults and holding them hostage and terrorizing them, it's really time for that we have a response. And so today's episode is a call to arms, mental arms, not the physical ones, because we tell each other to stay dangerous. And I'm not talking about like physical weapons, it's important to, stay strapped out there, but I'm talking about the most dangerous weapon that black folks could have is knowledge. The song that introduces the show is called Stay Dangerous, and it's by an artist named Chuck Moon. And I want to make sure that we dive into what that means, what it means to stay dangerous. You know, Frederick Douglass once said that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And the more we educate ourselves, the more unfit we are to the agenda, you know, to the program of white supremacy. You know, Frederick Douglass's quote is, you know, the heartbeat really of the episode, because in 2025, you know, the system don't need change no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do it to ourselves. Like, we're already shackled in our own shit, psychologically, physically. You know what I mean? So, you know, like, niggas is already doing the destructive work to themselves. Before woke became a punchline for Fox News pundits, it was cultural. It was an imperative. It was something that we absolutely needed. Like, you need to stay woke. The phrase stay woke comes out of, you know, the black struggle for survival. You know, from blues musicians warning each other as they're traveling around the country, you know, stay woke, stay alert, you know, make sure that you understand that there's crackers around here trying to take us out. Like, there's shit going on here. And it was their way of looking out for someone else. Stay woke out here. There's racists around the corner, you know, and this ultimately translated into the activists from the civil rights era. You know, stay woke is a reminder to keep your third eye open, to keep your guard up. Staying woke hasn't and wasn't always about the hashtags. You know what I mean? It was about staying alive. It was about staying informed. It was about staying connected to your people. To be woke is to have your eyes fucking open and know that the veil of equality and liberty and justice for all ain't for all of us. You know what I'm saying? So to be woke is to be aware of that. So you know who your enemy is and you know how to fight them. But, you know, over time, the system does what it always does. It co-opted our language, you know, it watered it down and it turned it into something to mock, you know. That's the reason why, you know, it's woke culture. You know, it's the reason why Ron DeSantis says, oh, you know, like, Florida is where woke goes to die. We know what woke means. Woke for them now, you know, is just watered down racism, nigga. That's what they trying to say. You know, but this is no different from what white folks has always done to try to diminish our accomplishments. You know, it's the reason why, you know, crackers got mad about fried chicken. It's the reason why, you know, they stigmatize watermelon, because of black farmers, you know, making a living off that shit, because of black people preparing plates, you know, and selling chicken, fried chicken at that. Now, I don't know anybody who could be a hater to fried chicken or watermelon. Though they're both fantastic. But what it comes down to is that white people can't stand niggas, you know, and they can't stand to see them win. You know, our ingenuity and our genius, you know, our savvy, you know, they have to bring it down. They have to mock it. It is only until they can capitalize off of it that it is no longer a mockery, you know. So that's why today we say stay dangerous. Because knowledge in the hands of black people has always been dangerous to the oppressor. You can't manipulate a mind full of knowledge. You know, you can't teach self-hate to those that know themselves. You know, I had to learn this while I was growing up, you know, because I had a lot of education, like formal education. I knew a lot of shit and still do, but I never had any knowledge of who I was and where I came from, you know, like my lineage, like the beauty of blackness. You know, that didn't come until after I was an adult. You know, I had no reverence for my black skin. You know, I always wanted to assimilate to whiteness, just because whiteness, you know, just how it was conveyed to me is whiteness was the right thing. Whiteness is how you succeed. So I always was trying to assimilate that, and being mixed, that just, it came more natural, you know, because my skin is a little bit lighter. You know, I don't have a black mom. I have a Asian mom. So it seemed like it was just more widely accepted in my effort to assimilate. But it didn't change anything, because one thing I know for sure now, like, nigga, you're still a nigga, bro. It didn't matter how hard, it didn't matter how you enunciated your words. It didn't matter how articulate you were. It didn't matter how educated you were perceived. You're still a nigga at the end of the day. And there's a reason why they don't teach, you know, the true history of black folks, you know, because they don't teach it to children. They don't want you to feel that self-esteem. They don't want you to feel that empowerment. They don't want you to feel that liberation. They, why do you think that they don't offer, like Black history, true Black history in any like middle schools, high schools? You might be able to catch it in a few high schools, but not many. There's a reason for that. They offer these classes at a collegiate level. And, but by that time, the spirit of Black children has been essentially reduced to nothing. I listened to a lecture given by Kwanzaa Kunjufu about the thesis about the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. And at the core of his lecture, he explains that Black children specifically are labeled as hyperactive, that they're learning disabled or they have behavior problems. And this starts as early as kindergarten, and it results in slower academic tracks. He further delves into the cultural mismatch styles of, the learning, the classroom learning, which is quiet, which is passive, which is individual work, which clashes a lot with how Black households are ran and how you are supposed to learn. So the school to prison pipeline is created by the labels of these Black boys as early as kindergarten as being hyperactive or learning disabled, right? And then with the potential that they have but is never realized, they're often less encouraged, and there tends to be fewer opportunities than for them than their peers. By the 4th grade, many Black boys begin to mentally disengage from school, and that's when people are like, oh, well, they're just bad, they're just cutting up. This is that cooling out. It's not due to the innate inability, but it's really just systemic alienation. This is an educational failure that ultimately results in the criminalization of Black youth. Brought to you in part by the crime bill and labeling our youth as super predators, and then campaigning for mass incarceration. Education and knowledge will always transcend this. The media, pop culture is entirely a campaign of psychological warfare, because the youth is growing up, in an environment that is designed to program behavior and not liberate the mind. So our youth is oftentimes portrayed as children who just don't want to learn, which is not the case. Little Black boys and little Black girls want to learn. That their intrigue for the world is just the same as anyone else. The problem is when you shrink that world, and you lead them to believe that there's no other outlet for their situation other than, what like the media depicts. It often, stereotypes. Black boys are portrayed as athletes and entertainers and oftentimes criminals, thugs and all that other shit. Not scholars, inventors, leaders. And it shapes how they see themselves and also how they treat themselves and others. So because they are being told, that they can only be ball players and entertainers and kingpins, they go chasing those bullshit ass aesthetics because the media told them, like, your worth is attached to, the labor of what you do, not who you are, not what you know, not any of those things, just simply what you have. And that's when we talked about last week is just consumerism. The promotion of material wealth as a measurement of, manhood, essentially for most Black men, diverts energy away from community building, in education and self-determination at the end of the day. So when the algorithm is consistently pushing like these hyper stereotype versions of Blackness to little Black boys and little Black girls, ultimately, what happens is you end up with the type of culture that has been perpetuated, and it's what people assume Black culture is. And when people associate Black culture with something, it's always like the excessive flex culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, niggas always flexing. And it's true. Niggas do be flexing. But why are they flexing? Because that's innately a Black characteristic? No. Who got the latest this and who got the latest that? How many bands can be stacked up in cash, with little to no understanding of that, of money, monetary policy, understanding that a cash is not growing, into more. It is just simply as good as toilet paper. Donald Trump, Adolf Hitler from Timu, you know what I'm saying, took office, the dollar is plummeted by an additional 10%, which means that the purchasing power is 10% less than it was this time last year. So somehow niggas still find it in themselves to flex. That's not anything other than a lack of knowledge. If you know that, if you know what the fuck I just explained, nigga, you're not trying to wrap up 10s, 20s, and $100 bands and rubber bands, bro. You're gonna stop that shit immediately. Not because you're assimilated to what white people do with their money, but nigga, that's the only way we win. You know what I'm saying? In a capitalist society, you know what I'm saying? Money is a huge component. We got money. It's not like black folks don't have money. You know, we talked about this last episode. $2 trillion in purchasing power and spending power black folks have. What we spending it on though? Because we're consumers. Yes, everybody consumes. But we don't consume the way that others consume, because we're consuming for an image. We're consuming for self-esteem. We're consuming for validation. That's what we're consuming for. Niggas love shit because shit makes them feel like they are better than they were, you know? But at the end of the day, it don't matter who has what. You're still a nigga. They love consuming things, but not having one original thought. You know what I mean? Elevate that mind. Consume some books, nigga. The same way that you consuming motherfucking Instagram reels and fucking drama-filled lives, nigga, consume books. You know what I'm saying? Consume you a podcast, you know, consume and indulge yourself with conversation with intellectuals. You gonna think different. You gonna move different. You know what I'm saying? Like, talk to a nigga that's really gonna put you on game, that got wisdom. Nigga, you gonna move real different. You know, fuck all that flexing shit and just buying shit just to buy it. You know, understanding the difference between an asset and your liabilities. My favorite clip, you know, what brought me to be a big fan of Nipsey Hussle was, I think he was like 19 at the time, and you know, the interviewer was asking him like, well, you know, like, what you gonna do? Like, you know, like when you make it, you get the money. And bro was like, nah, nigga, you know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't gonna trick off on no diamonds. You know, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm gonna invest, you know, in some land, you know, cause all the diamonds and jewelry and shit, cars and shit, this is liability. Understanding the difference. We consume, but we don't become conscious. Now, you want to be a conscious capitalist? You want to be a conscious consumer? I'm all for that. But without the consciousness, without the knowledge, it's fucking pointless. Futility, that's what that is. Competition is consistently thrown in our faces by white folks, because white folks don't like to compete. You know, they like to compete with one another, but they compete in a rigged game. So when white folks is competing in a rigged game, you got to understand that the only way to defeat that is collaboration. And consistently, niggas will do everything but collaborate. They will do everything to step over niggas to get to more. Like, there ain't enough out here for everybody. And that is perpetually shoved into our faces, which is the game of individualism. You know, this is the concept of scarcity, which doesn't exist. Not in an environment where money is made up, where you can print more of it. There's no such thing as scarcity. And then media ultimately has people mimicking characters, you know, instead of building actual character. You know, niggas think that being dangerous equates to, you know, a Glock with a switch. Nigga, everybody got guns. Everybody fucking got guns. You know what I'm saying? This just not dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not intimidating. It's not none of those things. Anytime I see that shit, I see little niggas, you know, with the face coverings. I don't even know what the fuck you call that shit. I just know my kids be into that shit. They got the dreads and the, you know, the face coverings and all that bullshit. And I'm like, nigga, what is this? What the fuck is this shit? I understand, like, y'all niggas just do it just cause you young, but why? That's the only question that I'm asking. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to be dangerous, nigga? Know some shit. Know some shit. A gun don't make you dangerous. It doesn't. Little niggas don't understand that what they're emulating is controlled opposition. You know what I'm saying? Like, these rappers and shit, they don't live that lifestyle, nigga. They don't. They live soft-ass lifestyles. You know, a few of them, you try to make their mark and go back to the hood. But at the end of the day, nigga, they don't live that lifestyle. them niggas don't live that life. There may be a few of them that actually do, that live what they say. Most of them niggas don't. They are controlled opposition. And y'all niggas is out here emulating that shit. Y'all don't know that shit is destructive? I don't know anybody celebrating self-destruction. Not quite like this. That nigga that's wreaking havoc and doing all that bullshit, that's a character. That's not a lifestyle. That's not a way of being. That's not us. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what them niggas gave us. That's what crackers gave us. And y'all niggas wear that shit like a badge of honor. And I'm guilty of that shit. I just had to elevate my mind past that shit. Who really controls what? Do I control my mind or do they? Dangerous niggas to me are the ones, with degrees, the ones with some knowledge, the ones who have decoded a white supremacist matrix, to not be a victim of it, to not fall in and play right into their hands. That, to me, that's dangerous, nigga. I'm all for that because truthfully, like, all that shit is played, bro. All that shit, all that gang shit, all that street shit, all that shit is played. I'm not judging niggas who in the jungle and who gotta live it every day to survive, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's just think. I know when you live in a state of survival, that is different. It's difficult to think, but we got to stay cautious, nigga. We gotta stay dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of killing each other. Dangerous in the sense of becoming militant in the mind. Young black boys and girls are taught to perform blackness now, for clicks and for likes, not live in blackness for liberation. Black people are not a monolith. You've heard that so many times. So there is no one way to be, but it seems like there is only one way that they want black people to be portrayed. They copy the surface of the culture, the fashion, the slang, the antics, all of those things, while the substance of liberation gets buried deep into the soil, right where they want it to be. Behind the programming is a system that wants to turn us into individualistic consumers, not a collective, not builders. It wants us competing against each other like white men do. That's how they hold up this patriarchy, this rigged system, by stepping over one another, just to be the one, instead of moving like a people, moving like a group, moving like they got a shared destiny. Them niggas is one for one, not one for all. This system never is going to benefit us. It can't, because an atomized people is too easy to control. A united people, that's hard to control. That's a revolution. The Black Panther Party wasn't eliminated, my nigga, because we were violent, yeah, them niggas, them niggas had guns, but them niggas had guns because they had guns. It wasn't what the system told you. It wasn't what history told you. It's not because of violence. They eliminated them because they were effective. They infiltrated it and made sure that they destroyed it from the inside because they were a revolution. They knew what they were capable of. They were feeding kids breakfast. They were running health clinics. You know what I'm saying? They were teaching political education. They were building community infrastructure outside of white control. That's revolutionary. The U.S. government looked at that and said, that's a threat to national security. Now, how is that a threat, but the KKK not a threat? Think about it. They infiltrated, they sowed division, they assassinated our leaders, and they dismantled this movement brick by brick. Not because of guns, okay? Because of the unity. Because black people built systems for themselves, okay? When we build for ourselves, the empire loses control. They need us. I think the best way that you can personify this and depict it in a real world situation is what just happened in Orlando. You had what's her girl's name? I don't know the bitch's name. This little white girl. She I just know I seen a video. She shit her pants a while ago, but I digress. Anyway, she was trying to, carry on the legacy of Charlie Kirk and go rage baiting niggas at what was called a Black Joy Festival in August. And That's exactly what this is. Like, when white people can't control shit, like they will do everything in their power. It's the reason why they put themselves where we're at. Like, girl, wasn't even nobody fucking thinking about you. No one cared that you were there. You tried to make yourself relevant because the idea of white folks not being able to control anything, I mean, just, it's enough to send them into like a psychotic fucking episode. Staying dangerous is what the Panthers did every single day. They stayed organized, they stayed educated, they stayed ready, you know, to defend us, to defend our community. And no, not just with arms, but with structure. So why can't we organize? And the God honest truth is because niggas like to argue too fucking much. We out here arguing online about who's Caribbean, who's African. The system is watching this shit. They laughing because we can't find shit to be agreed upon. And therefore we remain divided. And by remaining divided, we remain predictable. A united people is unstoppable. A divided people is predictable. If I can predict your moves and we playing a game similar to chess, then I'm always win. It's always checkmate. Because I know exactly what you about to do. I know how that rook move. I knew how that knight move. I know you don't protect your king, and I know that your queen be swinging. It's too simple to defeat you in a game where you are predictable. You can apply that to any sport, you know what I mean? And anything that requires the slightest bit of strategy. If it's predictable, it's easy to defeat. So we got to look at that as a people and come back to that and say, okay, why is it so easy? Why is it so easy for them? Because we're not smart enough? Fuck no. Nigga, we are supreme intelligence. We're not organized enough. Staying dangerous means choosing discipline over distractions. You know, it's easy to get caught up in these conversations and argue with everybody, you know? Everybody not on this way, you know what I'm saying? And everybody can't go. And I don't expect them to. But quit arguing with niggas that's not going, you know what I mean? Harriet Tubman was not out down there arguing with them niggas. We got to shift the focus of these like identity beefs to a collective strategy. Because at the end of the day, we all black, nigga. Because white supremacy does not give a fuck. Where are you from? Okay, and I'm speaking to the Africans, the Jamaicans, the Haitians, the niggas from the Caribbean. They don't care, nigga. We all niggas, bro. They see your black skin the same way that they see mine. If it's not white, that's how they looking. It only benefits them when we not moving together. You know, if there's one thing that history has shown us, is black liberation is not a solo mission. It's a coordinated movement. You know, Angela Davis once said, we have to talk about liberating minds as well as liberating society. Yeah, she right. Queen is right, you know? And that's exactly where real revolutions begin. It begins in the mind. You listening to this is radicalizing the mind. You know what I'm saying? If you listen to other radicals, black radicals, you know, they gonna stimulate that mind first before anything. And then we can do it, you know, and then we can work into the organization. The system we're living in is highly fucking organized. Highly organized. From the government to the media to financial institutions. Bro, it's organized. Each power structure that oppresses us is interconnected, is interwoven. It's like clockwork. We've been conditioned to approach, you know, liberation like a pickup game instead of like a championship season. We have to treat it like it's a do or die mission. Malcolm X told us plainly, we are not outnumbered. We're out organized. He wasn't lying. The Black Panthers weren't just out in the streets with the guns, you know. That's what niggas think. They was just out there in leather jackets and full AK-47s and hammers. They was in the kitchen. They were in clinics. They were in the classrooms. They ran the free breakfast programs, okay? Feeding 2,000 children a day. That's a revolutionary act. They opened free medical clinics, revolutionary act. They did this all across the nation, not in just one place. They built schools that taught black children, okay, their real history. Jawanza talked about reclaiming our education, and it starts with black educators, specifically, to go even further, male black educators. They police the police, you know, to hold the violent ones accountable. You know, Jawanza advocated for strengthening our communities. This is how we eradicate the conspiracy to destroy black boys. Part of that is building a solid foundation in the community and in the families. Okay, the Panthers policed the neighborhoods, so everyone was no longer a suspect. The corrective action meant true reform, you know what I'm saying, and not this animalistic treatment that niggas get dealing with the white supremacists. The Panthers provided mentoring services. that was led by strong black men and women, the dangerous ones, not just because they wielded guns, but because they came from a place of knowledge and they came with abundance of it. And to combat the media distortion of our image, the Panthers, they had their own newspaper, that's revolutionary. All the members had to read it. At its peak, it had over 300,000 copies being printed every single week. It's 300,000 minds, eyes, being told the truth about who they are. That's staying dangerous. They organized like their lives depended on it because they did. And we still need to organize like our lives depend on it because they do. Fred Hampton told us that you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. Why? Because the movement was not built on individual personalities. You got to understand, you can't be bigger than the fucking program. The movement was built on the principles, the program, the people. They weren't waiting for a savior because they were building a structure. So what does organization look like today? Well, it's not about reinventing the wheel, my nigga. It's about reclaiming the blueprint that's already been given to us. Political education first. Absolutely. Every revolution starts with knowledge. If you're not reading and you nigga, I don't like to read, that's cool. You ain't got to read that book, nigga. Pick up an audio book. You like to listen to music, trade in instead of listening to an album or whatever it is that you're doing, nigga, trade that in for 30 minutes of just listening to an audio book. No more motherfucking excuses. There has to be a point in time where black anti-intellectualism is not met with excuses. We got to study. You know what I'm saying? We got to teach. We got to circulate real history, economics, the strategies in our communities, book clubs, youth programs, community teachings. That's where consciousness is built. Next season of the Rion Frequency is going to be 100% dedicated to books, recommended readings for the generation of revolutionaries that's to come and that's here now. We're going to be talking about, economic self-determination because that's the next category, pulling resources, supporting black businesses, creating investment collectives and removing dependence from the exploitive systems, bank black. Imagine if every dollar we spent on flexing was redirected towards a cooperative ownership. That's what we're lacking is ownership. You know what I'm saying? On the wealth scale, it's 2%. Black ownership is 2% compared to our counterparts. We have to start competing as a collective on an economic scale. Mutual aid and community infrastructure, food drives, health programs, neighborhood patrols. No waiting for the state to take care of us. The government doesn't give a fuck about us. They show that every single day in every single way and have for hundreds of years. They don't give a fuck about niggas, bro. This is the danger of the Panthers because they created parallel structures that rivaled the state. We need strategic unity because this isn't about everybody agreeing on every single particular topic. We don't need to. There is going to be discourse everywhere that there can be because that's just the nature. But we need to have core principles, okay? And we need to be working in coordinated lanes. Just like the Panthers built, their coalitions with Puerto Rican groups, white anti-capitalists and other oppressed communities, we have to do the same. We have to form an alliance and have shared liberation goals. Not just for show, not just for performance, not just for the aesthetic. It really needs to be rooted in cause and purpose. For the fourth and final step is going to be defensive discipline. Okay. And I'm not talking about no reckless ass violence. I'm talking about, self-defense, legally formed, organized, and strategic. When Malcolm told us by any means necessary, that doesn't mean bring chaos. That means be prepared for it. It means being principled, militant, being protected. We don't need to ask permission to build power. We need to commit to organization the same way that the power structure commits to oppression. Angela Davis reminded us that freedom for us is always going to be a constant struggle. Malcolm X laid down the strategy and Fred Hampton laid down his life to show us what collective power looks like. Staying dangerous is not just about being aware. It's about being organized. Because if we don't organize, we will be organized by the same system that we claim to resist. Power to the people isn't just a chant. It's a blueprint. The people have the power. The collective have the power. To say stay dangerous is not a trend. It is a mindset. It's the discipline to question everything, to educate yourself properly, to protect your people, to build the systems that will ultimately outlive us. They fear a people who can think for themselves. They fear a people who refuse to be distracted. And they also fear people who will stay dedicated to that purpose by staying dangerous. Knowledge makes you unfit to be a slave. So let's make ourselves unfit every day. This is the Rion Frequency. Stay woke, but more importantly, stay dangerous. So until the next time, stay royal, stay rooted, and keep that frequency high.
This was the Rion Frequency, where the wealth conversation starts with mindset and ends in legacy. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, rate us 5 stars, drop a review, and help the algorithm find the culture. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, smash the like. The Come Up is now in session.